I first took two 16-ounce bags of pinto beans and I soaked them in some water for 24 hours. You're going to want to soak them until the beans start to soften a little bit. I use pinto beans, but you could use any kind of bean you want for this recipe. White beans go well in this dish too. And then just drain them out. If you want to use canned beans, you could just skip this whole process. I'm making a large batch because I like having leftovers, but if you want to make a smaller batch, you could just cut the recipe in half and just give that a rinse. Then take two large onions and give them a rough chop. You're going to cook them in a pot, saute them. You could cook them with some oil, or better yet, no oil, just water or vegetable broth. And then take some garlic. I love garlic, so I'm using a lot. You might want to use less if you don't love it as much as I do. And give that a rough chop. I'm also using ginger. I'm using about half of this root. This is optional. And then you're going to want to chop it really finely, better than I did, if you can. And you're going to saute that in a pot. I put 2 bay leaves in there. And you're going to just cook it on a low heat for like 5 to 10 minutes until it's all, cooked down and translucent. And then you're going to add all the beans to the pot afterwards. And I'm using low sodium vegetable broth. You're going to fill the pot and the beans with all the vegetable broth. If you don't have vegetable broth, you could use water. That'll be fine as well. And once you have all the vegetable broth in, you could put a lid on it and cook it, turn it up to a medium-high heat, and cook it until it boils. And it'll look like this. And then you're going to turn the heat back down to low. And you're going to cook it for another 10 to 15 minutes, checking on it. And I added a cinnamon stick, but that's completely optional. I just like it, but you don't have to. You're going to cook it until the beans are softer. At this point, they'll probably still be a little firm or al dente. Then I add 1 small can of tomato paste. And here are the wet ingredients I'm going to use. Some molasses, some apple cider vinegar, some Bragg's liquid aminos, some mustard. I'm using horseradish, but you could use whatever you want. And sriracha sauce. And I forgot to show me putting in the molasses, but I used probably 3 to 4 tablespoons. And then I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of the Bragg's liquid amino. You could use soy sauce instead if you don't have that. And I'm going to use about 2 tablespoons of mustard. And about 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. And about 2 tablespoons of sriracha sauce. I don't measure, I just kind of throw everything in and then taste it and go from there. And here's the dry spices. I'm going to use nutmeg, which is optional, onion and garlic powder, and ground cumin. I'm going to use about a tablespoon of onion powder and about a tablespoon of garlic powder and about 2 tablespoons of cumin powder. I know it doesn't look like I put that much in, but I did. I wound up adding more. So that's the approximate measurements. And then you could grate in some nutmeg if you want. That's optional. I like the whole nutmeg, cinnamon, ginger thing. And I forgot to show it, but I added coconut sugar. 3 to 4 tablespoons of coconut sugar. Or you could use agave syrup if you want that instead. I would use about 1/4 of a cup of agave syrup. And then you're just going to stir that around, and it's already delicious. You could eat it like this, but since it's called baked beans, I'm going to be baking them. And just put it in a casserole dish and bake it in the oven at 375 for about 10 to 15 minutes, probably like 15 minutes, until it starts to bubble on top. And you'll take it out, let it cool, and it'll look like this. Now this is delicious to eat on its own or as a side dish, or I especially love it on a baked potato or a sweet potato, and I hope you enjoy this.